Hello, and welcome to a special Independence Day edition of the Constitution Study. My name is Paul Engel, and we are here to return the Constitution to we the people. Today, being the 4th of July, or a more properly known as Independence Day, I wanted to take a couple minutes and just describe to you the events that actually led up to the Declaration of Independence. You know, everybody in the world has a 4th of July, but only in America is that Independence Day. So as I hope most of you realize, this is the day we do celebrate the signing of the Declaration of Independence. You can find out more by going to the website, constitutionstudy.com. I have an article on the Declaration of Independence there. I'm also working on a new essay based on the Declaration of Independence. So if you sign up for the mailing list from the website, when that new essay comes out, you will get a copy absolutely free. The Declaration of Independence, what we celebrate here on Independence Day, actually has its start in June of 1776. See, back on June 7th, Richard Henry Lee of Virginia introduced what is known as the Lee Resolution. This resolution, it's short, it's simple. It says, resolved that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved of all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, that it is expedient forthwith to make the most effectual measures for forming foreign alliances, that a plan of confederation be prepared and transmitted to the respective colonies for their consideration and approbation. This was the start of what became known as the Declaration of Independence, this resolution that these colonies ought to be free and independent states. Now, we think of states today as kind of a sub-organization under the federal government, but that's not what Lee was talking about. Notice he refers that all political connections between the colonies and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved. He wasn't talking about creating a new nation, but he was talking about creating 13 states on par and equal with Great Britain, that they would then unite, as he says, and under a plan of confederation that they could all agree to stand up against the British Crown. And again, this is June 7th, 1776. And as you can imagine, this kind of caused a little bit of a kerfuffle. People were, the representatives of the colonies were a little concerned. So they decided to do what most Congresses do. They formed committees. In fact, they formed 3 committees. On June 11th, they created one committee to draft this Declaration of Independence. This is known as a Committee of 5. A second was a plan for forming the foreign alliances, and the third, how to form a confederation, just as the Lee Resolution had outlined. Now, these committees did 2 things. One, it gave them a chance to actually write a document, but it also gave time for the delegates to go back to their colonies for instructions. This was a serious step that was being suggested, and they were not going to take it lightly. Finally, on July 2nd, the Second Continental Congress unanimously adopted the first part of the resolution, the declaring of independence, with New York being the only colony abstaining. So 12 were for it, New York abstained. So Congress immediately began debating the document the Committee of 5 had submitted, and on July 4th officially adopted it. Now, this is interesting because, as I understand, John Adams, in letters he wrote to his wife Abigail, thought we would celebrate July 2nd, since that's when the Continental Congress adopted the idea of independence. But it was actually July 4th when they adopted the document for this declaration, is what actually became the holiday we celebrate today. Interestingly enough, only 2 people signed the document on July 4th, Thomas Jefferson and Charles Thomas. It wasn't until July 9th that the last colony actually approved it. It was July 9th when New York finally signed, and the document was considered, quote, fairly engrossed and signed by the remaining members of Congress. So you took from the 4th to the 9th, it took the 6 days for all the colonies to agree, and then everybody signed on to it. Once it was all said and done, then everybody started putting their name to it. And that's where we end up with this document, which it's a quite important part of our national history. This was the point when 13 colonies said, no, we are to be 13 states. And I want to read for you the beginning of this document. It starts out in Congress, July 4th, 1776, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitles them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to separation. This language, it was put together by the Committee of Five, the idea that it was unanimous, that it was United States, and interesting enough, united is not capitalized. It is an adjective. It is not part of the proper name. But it says it's become to the point where it is time for us to dissolve these political bands and to assume the powers of nations. And that it is important that not only these powers were the powers of nature, the laws of nature and nature's God, but that's important that these men and this nation, this new 13 states, tell the world why they were doing it and why it was right. That's why this day is so important. Yes, it birthed the nation. It birthed the nation with the understanding that rights are important, that the laws of nature and nature's God is more important than the laws of man-made government. And that it's important not only to simply throw a hissy fit and declare war, but it's important to explain why. We had a group of very wealthy men with a lot riding on this that said, we're going to do this and we need to explain why. So I hope you will enjoy your Independence Day. I hope you'll enjoy it with fireworks, but most of all, I hope you'll enjoy the freedoms that were purchased in blood and sweat and tears. Many of these men who signed this document lost their families, lost their property, their farms, lost their lives. It was bought with blood, and I hope you will take some time and enjoy the freedoms they purchased for you. And then, as the document ends, I hope you'll consider also pledging your life, your fortune, and your sacred honor to the continuation of this liberty-minded self-government experiment. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you'll subscribe on Apple Podcasts. I hope you go to constitutionstudy.com. You'll be able to find more information about this. Most of all, I hope you'll consider signing up for the mailing list and or supporting me on Patreon. But most of all, I hope you'll take this opportunity to read the Declaration of Independence and read the Constitution so that we can understand our rights, learn to assert and defend them. Most importantly, pass them on, educating the following generations to be free. Again, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you have a great Independence Day, and I hope to see you again at the Constitution Study.